Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Don't Die Dumb, a program that's not trying to sway you into anything or convince you of anything. We're simply trying to expand ideas on our society today. I'm actor and author Pete Christensen.
And I'm Coffee Brown.
And this is Don't Die Dumb. Our subject for today?
How conservatives can save America.
And what do you mean by that, first of all?
So, all of my life, conservatives have talked a lot of talk about things like integrity and strength and patriotism. However, they've been co-opted by a group which is unraveling all of those things. Conservatives believe that conservatism and right-wing populism are the same. And what we want to talk about today is that they are not. In fact, they are, in some important ways, they're opposites.
Now, let me say before we get started that for purposes of argumentation, I'm going to take the opposite opinion of him at all times, and I'm going to play devil's advocate. So please don't tell me how much you hate me for what I'm about to say. Now, let's expand on that a little bit.
Sure. So conservatism, its roots go back to Edmund Burke in England, and basically the core of conservatism is the idea that what worked in the past we can rely on, but what you think will work for the future is a gamble. And so they regard progressivism, which is not quite the same as progress, as threatening. Now, this is not to say that a true conservative hates every forward movement. They believe that it should be done carefully and methodically, testing every step for landmines before putting your full weight on your forward foot.
Okay, back up the bus a minute, okay?
All right.
One of the most successful people in America, one of the persons that is a true motivational speaker, is a man called Tony Robbins. And his whole theory, when you boil it down, is search back in your life. What works? Do it again, because you've already proven that it works. What's wrong with that?
A lot. Thank you for that question. That is actually the core of what we need to talk about today. So there's two gigantic problems with the idea that we can go back to the good old days. One is they weren't. They were good old days for the people who wrote the books about the good old days. I mean, I love Victorian fiction. I love Victorian sets and steampunk and all of that. But if you actually look at what people wrote about in Victorian times, there are literally recipes for how to make rotting fish head soup more palatable, because the quality of the food and the quality of the life was so terrible for the vast majority of people. So when we think of the good old days, I think a lot of Americans are thinking right after World War II and stuff. And there were some good things at that time, but in general, if you were a woman, even if you were a white male wearing a business suit, going to a good job, the people, in other words, for whom it was the good old days, you were an absolute slave to your corporate masters. You had to wear a tie, you had to wear a white shirt, you had to get there early, you had to leave late. Your whole life revolved around your job, and the highlight of your life was martinis at lunch if you had a high enough rank to have that kind of a lunch.
Now, that's what Dickens wrote about, but...
No, I'm talking about the 40s and 50s. I'm a century later than Dickens.
This is the fallacy in what you say. You think we have to go back and accept all of the past.
I do not.
A lot of conservatives don't want that.
I do not, but a cartoon version of conservatism does. So when we talk about going back to the good old days, but I said there were 2 points.
Yes,
so we're going to talk about them both.
Yeah.
One is the good old days weren't. So conservatives lived in a fantasy past, and progressives live in a fantasy future. But the other is that even if you imagine the good old days were as good as all that, even if you think you're going to live the life of madmen, and by the way, watch that show closely. It wasn't a good life. But even if you think that's what's going to happen, the world changes. What worked in the past isn't going to work for tomorrow, because the environment of the past is not the environment of tomorrow. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have AI. They didn't have the same kind of interactions with China that we have now, and so forth. They didn't have the history that we do now. So you cannot recover the past because time moves on. That doesn't mean we can't mine the past for lessons. We can and should. It means we shouldn't blindly trust the past. But I would agree with conservatives that we shouldn't also blindly trust the future.
No.
We are actually making bets when we make progressive moves.
Let me step in here with a note of sanity while you ramble on. Reagan conservatives
Yeah,
are not the same as MAGA conservatives.
exactly.
But it was during Reagan's era that the Heritage Foundation came up with Project 2025. And you think that goes too far?
It goes bizarrely too far, but it doesn't just go too far. It's not conservative at all. You have to realize that by modern standards, both conservative and Nixon are liberals, flaming liberals. And by traditional standards, by the way, Obama is a moderate Republican. Conservatives have equated Republicans with conservatism. But it's worth remembering Republicans began the civil rights movement, and then the Republicans and Democrats switched roles on that one. So Republican isn't automatically conservative. But it was for a while. During the Nixon-Reagan eras and so forth, it was all about conservatism. However, conservatives believe in things that right-wing populists do not. Conservatives believe in equal opportunity. But right-wing populists believe in my tribe against your tribe within the country. Conservatives believe in national security, but right-wing populists believe in turning us against each other for the sake of party strength, not national strength. Conservatives place country above themselves, whereas right-wing populists think that petty vendettas are a perfectly good reason to abort the rule of law.
So how do you think, because I'm not seeing it, how can Republicans, conservative Republicans, save America and not go against their own party? That doesn't make any sense.
They cannot. They need to form their own party and or vote Democrat for now.
But okay.
Let me finish. Democrats, modern Democrats, first of all, they have moved very much toward the center, rightward from from what we think of as classical Democrats. Remember, this was originally the party that was against civil rights. So there's a lot of movement here. But modern Democrats are where traditional Republicans were just a couple of decades ago. All right? It was Newt Gingrich, actually, now about 30 years ago, who began the idea that the truth doesn't matter. The perception of truth is how you win elections. There's actually a YouTube of Newt Gingrich saying, he's arguing with a TV reporter, and he's saying, well, crime has been rising for 20 years. And she says, no, it hasn't. The FBI statistics show it falling for 20 years. He goes, that's just not true. She says, well, it's the FBI statistics. It's like the only statistics we have. And he says, well, that might be true, but what's important is what people believe crime is doing. That began the movement toward what is now just officially party policy to gaslight their own base. Now, I don't like the idea of being a member of a party that I know is lying to me in order to get me to go along with them. If my party has something useful to say, then they wouldn't need to lie to me. If they have to lie to me, it means their core message isn't one that I would agree with. That's alarming.
Now, that's if you believe they're lying. I think they just have
We know for a fact they're lying. We have the data.
They just have a separate point of view. You think crime is not bad?
Crime has been falling throughout most of our lifetime.
But
in all of the official statistics. But let's talk about the criminal alien, the invasion, the national emergency of an invasion of criminals from Mexico. Texas's own data shows that illegal immigrants, are 30% less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans. That may well be because they don't want to run afoul of the law and get sent back. But whatever the reason, we know, we have the data from Texas, not exactly a liberal bastion, that they commit less, not more crimes than native-born Americans do. Or take the Haitians who were stealing pets and eating them. One woman, one time, who lost her dog, told the police that she thought her Haitian neighbors had taken her dog and eaten it. And that is the source of the entire Haitians are eating our pets frenzy. She found her dog healthy, went back to the station and said, oh, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have accused those Haitians. And the station tried to recant the story, but it was too late. This thing had become a meme. And on tape, you can actually see this on YouTube as well. A reporter is asking Vice President Vance in a different setting, J.D. Vance, is that thing you just said true? And he looks her right in the eye and says, it's not my job to know if it's true. It's your job to find out if it's true. Now, if you belong to a party with that loose an association with the truth, how much do they trust you? If they're lying to you, and you know they're lying to you, everybody I've asked who is a supporter of the Republicans says, yeah, I know the guy is lying all the time, but he doesn't mean any of that. That's actually the definition of lying.
You can't hear yourself talk. You cannot see yourself objectively. By that I mean that you said the MAGA movement is pitting the country against the country. And then you went on for a 5-minute rant about how bad Republicans are.
Correct.
So
Republicans are the biggest threat to constitutional democracy that we
You're
face.
doing the same thing they're doing then.
I'm not happy about it, but yes, I am making that exact point.
So it's okay
But-
if you regret it.
Well, our theme today is that conservatives could right this ship. Conservatives could do one of two things. They could either actually look at policies and say, who's closer to classical conservatism today, modern Democrats or modern Republicans? I'm not talking about the parties of 20 years ago. I'm talking about the parties of today. But the other thing they could do, and I'd like them to do, is form the log cabin party, so that we have Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney, for example, who actually think that the country is more important than the party. They need to form a conservative party. We don't have one. There is no conservative party right now.
The closest thing to a third party ever winning was when Teddy Roosevelt had the Bull Moose Party. And to tell them to form a third party, it's not feasible.
Agree. If they almost agree. If they form a third party, they will lose for a while. But you know what? If conservatives are going to talk all day about the sacrifices they're willing to make and the integrity they have and putting their country before the party and before themselves, then maybe they need to step up and lose a few elections as kind of penance for letting their party be hijacked by right-wing populists.
You are talking in an impractical way. So say a Republican conservative, say I want to go against my own party. Say I want to vote down some of the policies that I don't think are right. What's going to happen is the party's going to turn on me from orders of the commander-in-chief. I get thrown out of office, and I've accomplished nothing.
No. I was right with you till the very last line. I don't agree that they've accomplished nothing. We need a conservative revolt. We need a conservative party. I absolutely believe this country needs the dynamic tension between left and right, between progressives and conservatives. One group is excited by opportunities, progressives, and they want to leap for a better world that they can see in their mind's eye. But it is an unproven world. The other group wants to hold on to a fantasy past and hold on to traditional values that they think have served them well in the past. But the Republicans are neither group, and the Republicans are more than happy to destroy everything they built if they think it makes their own party stronger, which it will not, because they are the best gift that Russia and China ever got.
Now, you say all this, but the point is, if you're in the middle, all you're doing is being a mamby-pamby for both parties, draining votes off from your party.
I used to think that. I used to think that the middle road was a weak and insipid term, and I didn't like it. However, the Buddha promoted the middle way, and he was a pretty smart guy. Certainly, the Greek Stoics promoted the middle way, and they were pretty smart guys.
We are not a Buddhist country. We are a Christian country.
Well,
We always have been.
we actually have not always have been. The country was founded by Masons and Deists. But whether or not that is true, the founding fathers were all steeped in classical Greek philosophy, and that very much does promote the middle way. Extremes are the definition of extremism. And right now, the extreme right is the extremist group. I absolutely do not favor an extreme left government, but it doesn't mean I favor an extreme right government. The opposite of a bad thing is almost always another bad thing. And right now we have the opposite of what they think is bad, but it's become this cartoon parody of itself. We have armies moving into cities. A police state is not law and order, and it's absolutely not the rule of law. And we have Trump putting Comey up on charges right now for literally nothing, and Comey is the guy who got Trump elected the first time. This is how Trump treats his friends.
Now, I'm going to draw this back a little.
We have
to
three
the-
groups. We have conservatives, liberals, and insane people.
Hold on.
Okay.
And I'm not sure which one of those groups you fit into. But let me say this. If you're against us being a Christian nation, if you're against the very the very tenets of the Ten Commandments. What does that say about you?
It says that I recognize that the Constitution is the document that our country was founded on. And by the way, the separation of church and state was done as much to protect the church as it was to protect the state. Because of the history in England of the Roman Catholic Church and the English king fighting for dominance, the king basically abolished Roman Catholicism, made Catholics pariahs in England, and started the Anglican Church, which is simply a Catholic church that answers to the king. So the idea that the church shouldn't be under the secular thumb was just as important as the idea that secular government shouldn't be under the church's thumb. And if we were Christian, which Christian would we be? Evangelical, Catholic, Lutheran, Methodist, Unitarian, Quaker?
By not allowing the Ten Commandments into schools, you are setting up children to be indoctrinated in the far left, radical, wacko thinking. And you know that.
So I'm actually glad that you said what you just did, because one of the conversations I think this country should have, I think conservatives, as I mentioned before, conservatives are right about some things. Not right about everything, neither is the left. But one of the things I think we should do is have a national conversation, an actual conversation, about what are the values we can all agree on. For example, we can agree that contracts should be enforced. I think almost all Americans would agree on that.
Sure.
Believe it or not, the left and the right are both very pro-capitalist. They differ a little bit in terms of the kinds and amount of management, but they're both pro-capitalist. Both the right and the left believe that we should work for what we get to the extent that we can. There are differences in what they think we can do and how responsible we can be, but those are conversations we can have. So an actual national dialogue about what are our values in the 21st century, I think it's time for that. I think we haven't had one in a long time.
The problem is the left wants to take the money away from the middle class, from the working man, and give it to the poor.
No, the left wants to take the money away from the wealthy, and the wealthy have been taking money away from the working class to the wealthy for a long time. For example, just at the same time that Trump imposed tariffs on everybody in the world, including our friends, he started an economic war even with our allies, our economic allies. Just at the same time that he did that, which is a tax on people who spend money, meaning the poor and middle class, he pardoned the billionaire tax dodgers. What more overt example could there be of transferring the burden from the very wealthy to the middle class and poor?
These countries have been ripping us off for years because they have protectionist trade policies and we don't. He's merely given us protectionist policy. He's put us on the same level playing field as them.
So a core conservative value has always been that tariffs are a bad idea. They may have a few very limited applications, but they should be used with extreme trepidation. That has always been a fundamental conservative policy. Also, small government and, although Adam Smith did not promote it, laissez-faire capitalism has been a conservative standby. This is the exact opposite of that. This is an extremely overmanaged economy.
Don't make me point my finger at you again. Now, now who's living in the past? You're going way back to justify what you're saying. Oh, the core of conservative has always been that we don't put tariffs on people. Well, that's old thinking. And you yourself said earlier that we can't have old thinking.
No, I didn't quite say that. What I said is that it's not, the fact that it's old doesn't automatically make it right. But I'm not especially defending or opposing tariff policies. I'm pointing out that if you're doing this in the name of conservatism, this isn't conservatism.
So how can I, as a conservative, save the country without being ostracized, penalized, and eventually scrutinized to the fact where I can't function?
You cannot. You've empowered people who want to get rid of the Constitution. That's literally what Project 2025 is. You're going to have to stand up to them, and when you do, they're going to punch you in the nose. If you don't have that kind of courage, I understand that. It's a scary world. But don't talk to me all day about manly courage and then be afraid to stand up for the country. That's bullshit. I don't want to hear that.
That's not my job. That's your job. I'm a conservative. It's not my job to tear down my own party. What are you, nuts?
It is not your party. It is your country. Republicans are not inherently conservative. They've been liberal in the past. They're right-wing populists now. If you want to say that you're standing up for conservative ideals, you need to at least know what they are and then compare those with your party. And right now, Democrats are far more conservative than Republicans are. That could change.
These are all lofty, vague ideas. Tell me three things a conservative can do now that you think will save the country. I don't mean a conservative in power. I mean the average working schmo that is a part of the Republican Party.
Overtly oppose the concentration of power that this bootlicking Supreme Court has put into the presidency. A long-standing cardinal pillar of conservatism is the balance of power between the three branches of government. They do not want a king in the White House. And in fact, this country was founded to get out from under King George's thumb, recall. So we don't want to go back to that. Also, conservatives have taken tremendous pride in beating Hitler. Yet now we see both Confederate and Nazi symbols at MAGA rallies. That's a problem.
That's because we have to do something about Antifa. Antifa and QAnon are ruining this country.
So QAnon, first of all, is the darling of the right wing, not necessarily conservative. So conservatives on a good day are pretty sane and they try to be rational. That is clearly not the Republican Party. But if you're going to point to QAnon, that's MAGA's baby. That's not the Antifas. Now, if you want to point to Antifas, it's important to understand Antifa is a contraction of anti-fascist. And yeah, we should be that. But there is no organization called Antifa. That's actually a made-up organization by the right. It's just a label for everybody they don't like.
Antifa and Black Lives Matter are the ones starting the riots. When you look at January 6th, that was all BLM.
January 6th. Okay, so Trump has talked about using the Insurrection Act in order to impose military rule on cities that have not attacked the government in any way at all.
Crime is crazy in Chicago. In Chicago right now, people are getting gunned down in the major areas of the city. It used to just be in the ghetto areas. Now it's right in the shopping areas.
Again, crime has been falling all over the country for a very long time. There are
not fast enough.
There are pockets where it jumps up from time to time. You might like it to fall faster, but imposing military rule on the country isn't the way to do that. In fact, all over the world, there are places that have police states, and they don't have a better crime situation than we do. They have police states.
So are you saying this is just a prelude to martial law?
No, it's already martial law. If you're moving armies into blue cities, it's already martial law. It's not a prelude. We're there now.
Well, after he takes care of the blue cities, I'm sure we're going to go into the red cities. And a lot of
That's nice that you think that.
A lot of them would welcome our help to clean up the crime that's right now they're under the thumb of.
So Trump is declaring everybody to the left of him.
You want rule of law to everyone except you.
How did you get there?
Because you're upset that they're doing it in blue cities.
No, I'm upset that they're doing it at all. The army is the wrong instrument for law and order. And it's certainly the wrong instrument for rule of law. Rule of law is a term that means the law applies exactly the same to you and to me. Do you think Trump is applying, and the Supreme Court and this MAGA Congress that we have, do you think that they're applying the law equally to liberals and to conservatives? Well, I should say to liberals and populists, because remember, we're not talking about conservatives. Conservatives are the one group that could fix this. But you would have to have the courage you've been claiming to have all this time. And I'm not seeing it.
Now, there are some things that bother me. Number one, that we are building after that gift of a $24 million or $54 million plane from the Saudis. Suddenly we're let the Saudis building a military base on American land up in Idaho, number one, or Montana. I don't remember which. And number two, Clarence Thomas has been given all these gifts from people and no one holds them accountable. How can conservatives hold these people accountable? I don't see any way it's possible.
The conservatives are going to need to withdraw their support from the populist right They're going to need to reestablish a new conservative party, and they're going to have to accept a period of time in the wilderness as a kind of penance. They're going to lose elections for a while until they rebuild their base. But I am pretty sure there are far more rational conservatives than there are right-wing populists.
Here's what
You need to trust yourself. You need to believe you are the people you claim to be. And I'm not seeing it.
Thanks for the lecture. We'll play that back next time I go to church. But let me add a little bit of reality here. Okay, I don't believe in everything that's going on, but you keep claiming that conservatives have to change this. They got to do it. No one else can do it.
No one else can, I don't think.
Pardon me?
I don't think anyone else can.
What we want is a nation where there's order to things, where things are not being thrown in our face constantly, where I can watch TV without having my kids embarrassed or shocked by sexual connotation to everything we see, where gay rights aren't thrown in our face, where liberal ideas aren't taking over everything. We want a balance. That's all we're asking for.
Well, clearly not a balance. What you want is total victory. That's what Project 2025 is. It literally gets rid of the Constitution and replaces it with a wildly right-wing document. But what you said a second
You're
ago-
mistaking rich billionaires for Republicans.
Oh, what I was going to say is that Americans need to understand that the American experiment, which was very successful for quite a long time, balances freedom against order, against security. Freedom and security always come out of each other's budget. If I'm free to own a gun, you are less secure because I might shoot you. But if I'm not allowed to own a gun, then you're less secure because you can't own a gun for self-defense. The freedom always balances responsibility against liberty, and it's never going to be perfect. If it's 100% responsibility, everybody is accountable for like one certain set of rules, you have fascism, which is where we're going right now. We're there now. But if you don't have any shared rules, or people just aren't held accountable, then you have chaos. And so this balance between chaos and fascism, that defines the American experiment. What we want is as much freedom as we can have without actually degenerating into chaos. And that's a legitimate discussion.
The country has fallen into such disrepair that we need a strong leader for a change to take control. That's
Great.
all we're asking for.
Great, let's work on that disrepair. Sorry, what's he done for the infrastructure? I remember Joe Biden put like $1 trillion into infrastructure.
If you look at
What has
any
Trump
of
done
the
for the
signs
infrastructure?
across the nation for the
Oh, wait, he
infrastructure,
put gold Trump signs on things. So I guess that improved the infrastructure.
all those infrastructure projects were backed by Trump and by
Excuse me?
Republican governors. You might not want to admit that.
I don't
but
admit
that's
that.
what's going on.
I
you know.
absolutely don't admit that.
What else
He
bothers
pulled
you?
funding away from all the infrastructure projects.
And then they went through on a more balanced basis.
What's an example?
I can't give you an example.
I bet
offhand.
not.
I didn't memorize all this, you know.
Right.
Tell me what else you think is bad.
So Pam Bondi explicitly said she was going to use the Attorney General's office to go after anyone who criticized Trump. That is literally the opposite of American values. Quite literally the opposite. And it's also illegal, by the way. It's an impeachable offense, but when the whole government is owned by the MAGA right, who's going to hold her accountable? And I'm not sure even the voters can, because I'm not sure that that any vote they disagree with will be ratified. I think voters may have missed their opportunity. This may be a moot conversation.
Well, it's heresy. They're saying things merely to aggravate the American people without any basis.
No, they're actually taking action against the rule of law by prosecuting people whose crime is they disagree with Trump.
We can't.
In the past, we would have said that was civil action.
And what the people they're taking action against are agitators. They're trying their best to agitate people, and that's how we end up with riots
Former
in the
FBI
streets.
Director Comey is an agitator
Yeah, he did everything he could
to get Trump elected.
to, once Trump was in office, he put every roadblock he could in front of him. You know, these people, if they just leave him alone, you could see all the good he's doing.
Which would be,
He's organizing the country. He's getting the trade deficit in order. He's getting our
is the
allies
trade deficit
to pay
actually
their
improved?
order. He stopped 7 wars so far.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess if you count fantasies, even there, his fantasies are pretty terrible. His fantasies are to destroy everyone who criticizes him. That's not the American way.
Well, see, now you're over exaggerating.
I don't think so. He said it pretty bluntly.
I don't remember. I didn't hear that.
We're
So,
going to
and-
use the AG's office against anyone who criticizes Trump. What did you need that would be blunter
Well,
than
that's
that?
taken out of context.
We're withholding funds from blue states and sending the army into blue states. Blue states. Now, the definition of blue state is they didn't vote for me. How much blunter do you need than that?
Well, I can't listen.
Oh, and did I mention the Confederate and Nazi flags at the MAGA rallies? How much blunter do you need than that?
I can't listen to any more of that. And that's good, because our time is up. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the program. Once again, I'm playing the devil's advocate. I'm Pete Christensen.
And I'm Coffee Brown. Remember,
Don't die dumb.